Welcome to the Breakfast Leadership Show, where we interview global thought leaders on business, leadership, and life. Here's your host, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and chief burnout officer of the Breakfast Leadership Network, Michael Levitt.
Welcome back. I've got Dan Thomson on the line. Dan, how you doing today?
Yeah, good. Thanks. Hi, everyone.
Good. Great to have you here. Really interested in this conversation because you're doing some amazing work in the AI space. So why don't you share a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into the conversation.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. So I'm Dan Thomson, CEO and founder at Sensay, where we are creating a form of digital immortality by creating a lifelike digital replicas of people as a way of essentially empowering and enhancing who they are. My own background is it's quite the journey. I studied philosophy at university, went through into a little bit of finance before actually turning to entrepreneurship at an early age to set up restaurants and bars, which turned into kind of a international chain of health food cafes. And then have spent the last few years working in tech, and along the way, I actually ended up writing books about the idea of creating digital AI copies of ourselves. And with the explosion in AI over the last couple of years, actually was, amazed that I actually have the ability to build something like that. So it's a really blessed position to have the chance to do that.
And looking up your background and things like that, going back to the bartending days, one of those roles, and I'm a big fan of bartenders as individuals and human beings because they're low-paid therapists, quite frankly. They need to be paid more, but that's a side note. But when you have these conversations with a variety of different people, it can stimulate ideas. And I've seen a ton of entrepreneurs come from that space throughout my life. I know people that launch businesses, whether you're a great example, where you started off, doing some bartending, and then you started running some businesses, and then the health food thing that just took off, all the things that have happened, all of these things build up, and it allows you to be creative in other areas. And then, the idea of you thinking, okay, we need to have a digital version of us from a legacy standpoint, not just, we see things in AI and we're still in the early days of it, quite frankly, but, the fact that you had that inspiration to go, you know what, I want to have a way to be able to create a digital version of me to be able to do things not only now, but forever, quite frankly, and from messages to loved ones, or sharing your story. I mean, the sky's the limit on this. So love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? You hit a really important note there. People who work as bartenders or mixologists or anyone in hospitality in general, right? You're looking at industries that have a exceptionally high failure rate, are exceptionally competitive. And at the same time, you find incredibly talented, hardworking people who work for next to no money a lot of the time. Often, there are some opportunities out there to do quite well, but especially in the sort of the top end where they really care about the food, the drinks, they really care about the customer service. And there's a huge amount of lessons to learn in that in terms of operating businesses. And it is almost a shame that so much creativity is spent on these kind of passion projects of bars, restaurants. It's easy for a lot of people to think, oh, when I've got enough money, I'll open my own bar. And I've been to enough bars, so, I know what makes it work. The reality is that there's just so much that goes on behind the scenes that there is to learn and build up. And so it really does, create an incredible pool of people who, are hardworking, are very, trustworthy and good people for the vast majority that I've met. And, who do then go on to do, their own businesses or just become really good workers because they're used to working crazy shifts. They're used to working long hours, and, they're grateful as soon as they actually have a chance to, apply themselves in something that's, they're more passionate about. So, I'm a big fan of the hospitality industry as a whole. I think it's incredibly difficult for anyone to get into and actually do well in, but in terms of, where people come from and a lot of people look down on the sort of that industry and the people who work in it. But I think that, that there is a big stigma against it where there shouldn't be. And that's a bit of a shame. And so, and then when you're talking about how that impacts business and inspiration, you kind of touched on it a bit, but the customer service element, the idea of like, getting to know your customers, getting to actually have the memory skills as to what they like and adapting things to them. The simple one would be getting to know someone and making the perfect drink for that person. And there's a lot to be said in that, in terms of customer adoption, retention, and just, being customer obsessed and focused, which a lot of companies, a lot of industries could definitely learn from. So yeah, it's an incredible industry to sort of pick from. But personally, my sort of transition from there to tech was more probably to do with like more of a personal story where I actually kind of lost my memory for a few days after a bit of a severe concussion, unrelated to drinking and bartending, unfortunately. And but I definitely had a lot of inspiration in terms of the way that we would operate and respond to customers and focus on them from those days. And I think that's always carried through in the way I handle myself, because you get used to dealing with a lot of stress and drama and pressure that other early careers don't necessarily give you in the same way. I think people think that they get stress and problems to solve, but man, there's nothing like a high pressure shift working bars and the thrill that comes from it, but also the ability to handle a lot of things going wrong very quickly and turning them around. So it really is a great place to sort of learn those skill sets that you can't really pick up in that many other places.
I remember my first job was working at a grocery store, and we were in a community. It was weird because our border town was very low income, and we were, middle income, basically, maybe high income, and then the next town over was high income. And the road that this grocery store was on was a major pathway to a lot of industry, governmental buildings, and then obviously low income related type of roles as well. So long story short, our clientele could be the poorest of poor that were begging all day just to get enough money to buy a couple things at the grocery store, to multi-millionaires coming in to buy whatever they have. And the beauty of working in that type of situation is you're dealing with a variety of different people from economic standpoints. But what I learned, thankfully, at an early age was people are people. Doesn't matter if they are very rich or very poor, they're still people, and they have experiences, needs, concerns, all of that. And when you get exposed to that, what that does is it gives you a better foundation, and especially an entrepreneur world, of being able to address and recognize needs of people and come up with solutions that will help them accomplish what they want to accomplish, give them back a little bit more time, or create training videos for work, or personal videos. And when we talked about this a little bit briefly in the pre-show, one of the things that came to mind when I was, researching your organization and the work that you're doing in the technology to create a digital version of you, is I was thinking about people that have Alzheimer's or dementia, or they are on the early stages of that, where further down the road, you kind of lose them a little bit. Their memory, and you mentioned a moment ago, your memory loss from the concussion. And it's one of those things when you have this block of time where you forget something, even if it's a short period or maybe, a much longer period, that can be very frustrating to the individual, their loved ones, friends, and all of that, where this is a way, and I just thought of this technology that you have, is this would be a great way for me to, and others, to just say, you know what, I'm going to create this and share my story, history, background, experiences that I had in my youth. I think of, this, my mother passed away earlier this year, and my dad died about 4 years ago. So the opportunity to talk with them about other experiences is gone. I don't have that access anymore. Or asking about an uncle that we knew, but we really didn't know, and curiosity going, okay, what did they do? What was their vocation? Just things like that. Those opportunities, unless there's other relatives around, which in this case there isn't, it's kind of lost. So this is, again, just and one angle from a personal standpoint. So, what are some other things that people can use, your technology for, from obviously a work situation, but also a personal one?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, dementia was one of the earliest use cases that we actually built out. And it is incredible because, I mean, yeah, from my own experience of losing my memory for a couple of days, it's one of the scariest things I ever kind of went through. And I take quite a lot of adventurous risks on my travels. But it was terrifying. I mean, not being able to quite remember simple things, my own name, where I was, who the people were around me, but kind of knowing that I should know at the same time, like having a word on the tip of your tongue is horrifying. And yeah, you can see that in dementia patients. You can see that in Alzheimer's disease sufferers when they're really just kind of searching for those memories, things they should know, and it's stressful for everyone. And as soon as someone is kind of diagnosed with any kind of degenerative mental disease, usually they are suggested to start a journal, start a life book, start writing down those stories from their life that they cherish. And that can often be difficult, older age, not necessarily used to using voice recorders or video, not necessarily, able to write or even just, stay focused anymore. So having essentially an AI chatbot they can interact with, that will call them, that will learn from them and preserve those like really special stories and parts of them that make them unique for their friends, their family, for their kids, their grandkids, their great grandkids, to learn from them, learn from their successes, their triumphs, their failures for future generations, is something that, is really a powerful use case for what we're building. And one of our main avenues. But there are, it's such a powerful technology when you talk about the ability to replicate people as AI, versions of themselves, because there are so many threads to pull on. You can look at education, offering, world-class education from some of the greatest minds, sort of past and present, to the poorest areas on the planet where knowledge is scarce. So you could take like leading professors at leading universities, or, famous historical figures who could teach specific subjects to people who otherwise wouldn't have access to that kind of education. You can look at, obviously the legacy technology for preserving people after they pass, or having the ability to call on them. You can look at interactive NPCs for gaming, so make sort of characters more lifelike, and actually monetize that for the people they're based on. From a tech side and business side, you can look at people who have like almost like a perfect personal assistant of themselves to automate their life and do some of the more mundane tasks, so they can focus on the work that really matters, or have their free time back to themselves, so they don't have to worry about answering emails 24/7. And so there's so many opportunities here for different avenues this technology can be pulled on. You can look at brand marketing and even celebrity fan engagement. You can look at having the ability for, I don't know, a Taylor Swift fan to have a one-to-one interaction with Taylor, with that which would otherwise cost a huge amount of time and or money to access. So essentially what this does, it captures that knowledge, those experiences, you say, those skills, and makes them available in a way that they would otherwise be inaccessible. So by, whether you look at that in terms of an organizational setting, or whether you look at a personal setting, it just extends and empowers who we are in ways that we just are limited by our body, time, and mind. Like even right now, while I'm talking to you, my replica is actually answering emails for me. It's answering my Telegram messages, and it has incredible accuracy already. And it's super early days, and we're still working on this as a particular product. But this kind of autopilot that it can go on is amazing at how much time it saves me.
Just it frees up, not only for vacation time, for example, but just more personal time. So you could literally, like you're on this interview right now. I mean, the technology exists. You probably could have created a way to have an automated version of you on the show. Maybe you did. I don't know. But it's one of those things where the technology is just getting so amazing on this that it frees up humans to do human to human type of interactions, like face to face, in person situations where, we'll pick on Taylor Swift for a moment. She, let's say she does this and interacts with her fans this way. Well, it does free up time for her to do other things if she did that. And even going back before we forget, and this is something I had a discussion with somebody yesterday on the show about getting access to education to communities that have not had access to it before, in third world countries or undeveloped countries, that the talent pool there is off the charts. We just don't know it because we haven't given them the opportunity and they haven't had the opportunity to do it. So our world is going to become richer, not just from a financial standpoint, but just from an experience standpoint and the creativity of us humans across the globe and all regions that is just going to be absolutely eye-opening for us. And the fear of AI taking over our jobs or things like that. If you look in the history of the world, there have been tons and tons of jobs that no longer exist, and humanity continues to operate and create and work and provide and all of that. So I always tell people, don't let that fear get to you. Actually, lean into it and go, okay, well, what does this create? What opportunities will AI create for me, for my business, for my personal life? There's a lot of people who would love to be able to share their story, and even going back to ancestors and talking about, my deceased parents and all of that. I did some ancestry work when I was looking up, I made that reference to an uncle earlier. I was doing some research, excuse me, on him, and was doing that, and I stumbled across a couple ancestry sites and had family tree stuff and all of that. So I went, you know what? I'm really curious now because I've had DNA testing, so I know my heritage and all of that, but I'm really curious as to how far back I could go on this. And I was able on, one side of my family to find, I can't even remember what great 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 grandparent it would be, but basically it was the late 1100s that I've been able to trace back my heritage. And that was mind-boggling for me to think, that's almost 1,000 years ago. And it was just, and what it did is just made me even more curious. Like, what did that person do? What was their life like? And with AI and technology and being able to canvas all the, records and things that we have access to, we're going to be able to find out more about our past, and also which can help kind of give us a better understanding of, what our future holds.
Well, this is where it's really fascinating. And I love the idea of kind of interactive family trees. And I think being able to call on ancestors for advice is super powerful for a lot of people. Have group chats with, entire sort of ancestry lines, or, get to meet great grandparents you never really got to know. Unfortunately, a lot of the older information would have to be digitized, and a lot of it would just be kind of factual based, which, unless they were, particularly keen on journaling and writing down a lot of their experiences. And so even though we can get a rough idea about some of those previous generations, it's still going to be fairly incomplete. But this is where we live in this kind of golden age of technology where we have these options to record ourselves. We have these options to preserve, our stories through any medium. We can write, we can record it, we can type it, we can film ourselves and listen. And that's one of the biggest questions I get all the time is like, what should I be doing to, ensure that this is preserved for my kids, my great grandkids? I just say, just start recording it. It doesn't matter the format, and in a few years, it's all going to be easier and easier to, combine that into useful data. And people have been so scared by these kind of, the talk of privacy and security, and worrying about putting some personal stories down. And it's such a shame because there's so much opportunity to capture all of this for the future generations. Now, it might not be for your immediate kids because maybe they'll be a bit freaked out if you did pass, and they might not want to talk to essentially a digital version of you. But for those future generations, the ones who are curious, the ones who would like to get to know you and have a conversation with you, there's a real opportunity to leave your stories for them to get to know who you were, for you to be able to share your knowledge, your experience, talk about jobs that we had in these day and age before they get replaced by AI, whether or not they do, some of the old jobs that no longer exist. We could, talk about what life is like in this kind of era before AI possibly even becomes sentient or has an ability to take over super intelligence. It's a really incredible time for us to actually have that opportunity and have this way of preserving ourselves that previous generations just didn't have. And it's extremely sad that we do forget people after 2, maybe 3 generations if they're lucky, unless they're particularly successful, or maybe they journaled, maybe they had stories written about them. But even with all of that information, even with some of the most famous people on Earth and throughout history, you really don't get to know who they are from their stories. You can get an idea of like what they did and some of the facts, but it's very rare that people wrote about their sort of personality day to day, or and our identity is so subjective depending on who we're speaking to. Often those stories that did survive of these people, of their personalities, are often very biased towards the nicer people that wrote the stories, or quite biased against them because of the hatred, because of I think history is always on the side of the winners, right? So you very rarely get a fair balanced opinion of someone throughout history. It's always one very, very positive or very, very negative. And so these are the kind of like fun nuances that we kind of have to grapple with. But I count us very lucky to be alive in a generation where we actually even have this possibility. Wherever you sit on the fence of should I create a digital twin of myself? Should I record myself? Is my data private? It really does come down to at least we actually have the opportunity to say yes or no.
Yeah, it's an opportunity that I'm thankful for it. And I understand people's concern about their information being out there, but then in the same breath, they're taking a picture of what they're eating at a restaurant, which is time stamped and location. They even tag the location. So people, can find you if they're looking for you, type of thing. And 99.9% of the time, people aren't looking to see where you're eating dinner right now. It's just a case of I'm for the weight of the greater good of how this information can benefit society now and in the future is something that obviously it's debatable, but it is something that's really important. And the more information that we can capture for our future. And you made a really good point about history, focusing on the winning team per se, and it's like, okay, well, what about the losing team? What was their mindset behind this? Why did this world leader act and behave this way? Or why did this movement not take forth and this one did? And a lot of it is perception. But if you get the viewpoints of everybody, I think it makes it a little bit clearer and gives us a little bit more understanding on why things happen the way they do, and gives us the opportunity to adjust if we need to.
Yeah, completely. And then we do face the issue with that if we do make it open to people to record themselves however they wish and however their personality is, some other people may disagree with that type of personality. And at some point, we want to make our platform as open and public as possible, but at the same time, we don't want to accidentally create AI characters of some of history's biggest villains. So there's a line to be drawn somewhere, and it's a fascinating philosophical discussion that we have with our team regularly to try and figure out exactly where that line is drawn. Yeah, there are huge challenges in this, obviously, but it's we're just very incredibly blessed to be able to be building something that was science fiction, or it may still be science fiction, but have the opportunity to even attempt it and see the results we're getting with the relatively short amount of time that's gone into building this is incredible. And so we're extremely pumped for the future and how that's going to look and what these replicas will be capable of, because it's not just the ability for them to be a nice little chatbot. We're talking about real agency, real ability for them to do things for you. I mean, I talked about my replica already answering emails and messages for me, but it also books things in my calendar. It is offered to pay people at different times, which was a bit of a no. We've stopped that now. But in the future, it'll be able to do pretty much anything I can do online, which just come back to that whole idea of giving us back our time that we value to focus on the stuff that we want to focus on, whether that's the philosophy or more important work or the friendships or just the time to spend with the people closest to us. So that would be the end goal for us here.
Exciting times indeed. So loved your conversation, Dan. Where can people find out more about you, this amazing product, and all the work you're doing?
Yeah, the company's called Sensay. It's Sensay.io is the website. You can find us on pretty much most social channels with @AskSensay. Myself, Sensay Dan, on most social media and channels. But do check us out. Have a chat with my replica or any of the replicas that we've created, and yeah, we can all live together forever.
That'll be great. I'll definitely have all that information in the show notes. So thanks, Dan, for your time today. Really appreciate you. And I'm really looking forward to see, all the great work that your organization's going to continue to do on this, because the world needs it. So thanks again for being on the show.
Hey, it's Michael. Are you enjoying this episode? Have you ever thought about creating an episode or hosting a podcast? What are you waiting for? You can get started today with a new company. You can get started right away with podup.com, PODUP.com. I wish podup.com existed when I launched my show back in 2017. It would have made my life a whole lot easier in launching this show. But here we are. And now, thankfully, PodUp exists to help you. PodUp is one of the sponsors of the Breakfast Leadership Show, and someday they want to sponsor your show. Starting as easy as creating an account at podup.com. They literally have everything you need to run a full professional show. PodUp has over 35 different tools with AI integration, and AI integration is a game changer, people. It's amazing what some of these tools are doing for podcasts. So definitely something you want to check out. So if you want to set up a free starter account or get a full paid account, I have a 15% off code for you to use. It's Breakfast Leadership 15. And you can use that code when you go to podup.com. So check out podup.com. Or if you want a podcast that's done for you, where you pay an agency to do all the website, social media, and editing work, you don't have time to do all of that, you just want to record and send it and have somebody make it sound good, then you want to check out podallies.com. So PODALLIES.com. They're an agency run by the folks that build up the PodUp software right up from the beginning. So just go visit podallies.com and they'll make your show shine. So, and you can also get a 15% off for signing up there or with PodUp. Just make sure to use the discount code Breakfast Leadership 15. Can't wait to create with you and have you launch your podcast. Now let's get back to the show.
Thanks for listening to the Breakfast Leadership Show, part of the Breakfast Leadership Network. Visit breakfastleadership.com for tips on empowering your business and your life.